Hey, Sheri, how are you?
Oh, well, how are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you for making time to join me in Community for a Cause during a Sexual Assault Awareness Month interview with the straight Carrie Kurdakal on her web-based app, Victim Voices. Can you please tell us a whole lot about how this works, what your vision is, what made you start this, and how's your day going? I hope it's I do.
So, our tool is called Victim's Voice. It's all one word. And it was actually sparked by a science fair project that my daughter had when she was 10 years old.
Really?
And she built, yes, little known story, she built a anti-bullying mobile app because one of her friends was getting picked on and went through all the channels that she was supposed to, but that just created more angst in the school. And so my daughter came home one day and said, I wish there were something, a way that she could report this anonymously. I wish there were a mobile app. And so, being the tech oriented mom that I am, I looked at her and said, then go build one. And she did. Kids are
Yes.
only held back, I think, a lot of times by their parents' apprehensions. If you don't put any limitations on them, no expectations that there's no reason why they can't, then
Right,
they just do.
right, right.
And so she did. She won elementary division for the science fair in our county. Her app was called the Zebra app, which stood for Zoe Ending Barriers in Reporting Adversity. And that's where our corporate name, Abinra, comes from.
Okay.
She told me I was allowed to do whatever I wanted. I just couldn't use her name. So we dropped the Z off. But while Abinra is great for anonymity because nobody knows what that means, we needed something that really connected with people on a personal level. I am a survivor. I'm a survivor of child abuse, child sexual assault, domestic violence, sexual assault. I like to say I'm also a survivor of criminal court, civil court, and family court.
Oof.
That's almost as traumatic as the abuse itself.
My condolences, honestly.
But yeah, the app really came about because while every victim and survivor that I have come in contact with is documenting, what they're documenting does not match how the laws are written. So, from a national statistic, there was a study done from the Prosecutors Association that found that on average, 80% of all reported cases are dismissed largely due to a lack of evidence.
Taking notes. Keep telling me. Tell me more. Feed me.
So
80%. 80%.
80% nationwide, yes. And and that's only the reported cases, which we know are a small amount to begin with. So why is it if everyone is documenting that there's not enough evidence?
Right.
And that's where we come in. So we help people collect the facts and the details of each incident of their abuse in a way that meets legal admissibility and that criteria of evidence. It meets the burden of proof so that people who are experiencing traumatic events don't have to stop and try to figure out how to be an attorney at the same time.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
We also protect people from themselves. We're here in New Jersey. We're what's known as a one-party consent state when it comes to audio and video surveillance laws, AKA recording your abuser. So as long as I'm part of the conversation, which is the case with most states, it's legal. But next door in our neighboring state, that Commonwealth state of Pennsylvania, it is a felony offense if you don't have expressed consent from every person that's being recorded,
So,
even in the cases of abuse.
so interesting. It's a felony too.
Yes, you will go to jail. if your abuser decides to prosecute.
And what's so interesting about that is that's the type of law that someone's most likely not going to research before doing. They'll just think, I need to survive the scenario that I'm in. I need to get out and I need to do something so I have evidence, and not realize that their attempts to escape a horrible situation can land them in jail.
Yes, yes. So our tool does not allow for audio or video because we don't want someone to inadvertently do an illegal activity and upload it, and therefore also taint all their other evidence.
Right, right.
We do allow for images, and photos are great for evidence. Take as many pictures as you can. Take them close-ups of injuries far away so it shows where on your person and shows you in the picture. Show the holes in the wall, the broken dishes, the room torn up, the pile of beer bottles in the corner, the dog tied up outside, left in the weather. All these types of things that can show a pattern of abuse. When they upload the image, not only are they uploading the image, but they're uploading all the technical information that's attached to that image, which is called metadata.
Mm-hmm.
And all that can be used as evidence also. We also geolocate, date, and timestamp every entry, so we can show that the person is where they say they are when they're documenting.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And because we're not a normal application that you would find in an app store, there's nothing to download.
I have to say this, that is a brilliant way to run the program. I was looking over the website, I said, this is interesting. It's not something you download. However, everything's secure and stored in a database. You still have the escape button as well. So if someone's on the website, they can quickly just exit out to Google without being able to go back and see what the person was on. But you save the person that fear of, well, what if my partner takes my phone and they go through my phone and they see I have this app, this is VictimsVoice. That fear is alleviated by making that web-based app, and it's brilliant. I truly have to, hats off to you for that.
Thank you.
Welcome, you're welcome. Really, really smart move.
The bigger, well, not the bigger, but the also equally as important reason is power and control is all about abuse. Sexual assault is not about an act of sex. It's about an act of control. The same with domestic violence. It's a gradual escalation of isolation and that power and control. A lot of people don't have their own devices, or if they do, they're being monitored all the time. So even in the case where you have a household with children where there's domestic violence, the children, and for us, because of age laws, any child 13 or older can have a license. And if it's not safe for them to document in their own home, go to school. If you're working, go to work. You're not violating any computer usage policy because we're not storing any information locally on any device. There are people without means that don't have smart devices. So what a luxury to be able to go to a public library and document what you need to document without having access to your own devices. So we wanted to make sure that equally as important as protecting the safety and security of people by not having a downloaded app, we also wanted to make sure access for everyone. So anyone, as long as you can get to a device that has web access, you have the ability to document also.
So I want to ask, if someone doesn't have their own device or it's monitored and they don't have access to it, so they can't take photos, what kind of documentation do you recommend they use to help build their case?
Just because they may not be able to take pictures, other people can take pictures on their behalf, and they can upload those pictures because we ask them who took the picture. Oftentimes, if you have injuries on your back, you can't take your own pictures back there.
Right.
So you have someone else take that picture. Now you have a potential corroborator that can corroborate that they also witnessed the injuries, and even a potential witness if they actually witnessed the crime itself.
Right.
There's a lot of peripheral evidence that we also collect. In some cases, domestic violence is very difficult to, there has to be a lot of physical evidence in the laws the way they're written right now.
Right.
Sometimes it's easier to arrest someone on animal cruelty charges. And so we ask the questions about animal abuse.
Okay.
A lot of people won't leave because they fear for their pet's safety. Or there's not a shelter in their area that will take their pets and they don't want to leave them behind. And so we ask about those intimidations. We ask about even, did you used to have a pet and no longer have a pet? And do you know what happened to that animal? So we want to make sure that we're not only collecting the details of their own abuse, but abuses that may be taking place in the household, whether it be children, other victims, maybe there's other perpetrators that are in the household. Oftentimes you'll see other family members chime in and dole out that abuse as well. So we look at that peripheral evidence. We also look at things like weapons. What's the first two things that come to mind when I say weapon?
Gun and a knife.
Exactly. But did you know that a lamp can legally be considered a weapon if it's used to harm someone?
Right.
A belt, any object that is used to cause physical harm or intimidation can be legally considered a weapon. So we make sure that we help them understand that and document that information as well.
Really good stuff you're giving right here. Thank you.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, what are a couple of examples of when, outside of Victim's Voice, someone attempted self-documentation and it did not work? I know you gave the example of in Pennsylvania because of consent laws, which is wild. But say in New Jersey, someone did try to, they made the effort to self-document and it just didn't work in court. Can you give me an example of that and why it didn't work?
When people document, they document, here's an example that I use, okay? And I'm just going to use an analogy example. It's not it's a collection of experiences. Okay. It's not one experience in itself. So we're going to use male and female relationship in this example, husband and wife, okay. Right? So the husband comes home late from work. She made dinner like she's expected to do. Dinner was on the table. Dinner is now cold. The kids are in bed because it's late. They're in their rooms sleeping. He comes in, he's drunk. He trips over the dog, gets mad, kicks the dog, and injures the dog. Then he starts yelling, "Where's my dinner?" And she said, "Well, I made it hours ago, and now it's cold." So she goes upstairs to check on the kids because he's yelling. He follows her upstairs, gets mad, and pushes her down the staircase. She falls and injures herself, and the next day has to go to the doctor. She's on his insurance. She doesn't work. She stays home with the kids. Now, what she's going to document is that he came home drunk and started yelling at me and pushed me down the stairs. And I had to go to the doctor, but I couldn't tell the doctor what was going on because it would just make it worse.
Right.
Now, let's unpack that scenario for a moment. First of all, she has no pictures of the injuries. She goes to the doctor and tells the doctor that she slipped and fell in the bathtub. If that case went to court and she went up and the defense attorney said, "Well, you told the doctor that you slipped and fell, but you're telling us that he pushed you down the stairs. So which is it?" Right. Now her credibility is in question and she can be held for perjury for lying under oath. Because she said, "Well, I told the doctor that I slipped and fell, but this is actually what happened." Well, that story doesn't match up. But because she documented why she couldn't tell the doctor, it shows intimidation and fear. So it shows the intent of why she told the doctor what she did. Now we've also tied medical reports, which may be admissible as additional medical evidence, into this hearing that may not have ever come up because all she documented was he slipped and fell, or he pushed her down the stairs and she hurt herself and had to go to the doctor. But she didn't mention what doctor and all that. So now we're tying all this together. Also, in many states, if the child is in the home, does not have to be witnessing, visually witnessing the crime, that is legally child endangerment. So now you've got that parent under child endangerment. He kicked the dog. If she's documenting through hours, she never mentions that before, but she had to take the dog to the vet too, which shows injuries.
Right.
And now you've got animal cruelty as well. So now you're bringing all this external evidence together that under normal documentation doesn't even really show a crime.
Right. But the broader pattern shows the character towards the husband in question.
The other big thing is protective orders. So here in New Jersey, like in many places, you have a two-step process. There's that one incident that causes the victim to go and seek a protective order, also known as a restraining order. Now, that one incident could be something that after years of abuse is just that proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, right?
Right.
But in isolation, that incident itself doesn't rise to the level of needing a legal protective order. And if you have an upstanding citizen where there's no previous reports of any kind of domestic issue at all, this looks like a first-time offense,
Right.
which makes it even less able to get a protective order. And in many cases, as it is in New Jersey, if you don't document the history in the preliminary restraining order, when you go for the final restraining order hearing, you're by law not allowed to bring up any of that past history because that is subject to defense discovery, meaning that the defense attorney has to have access to review that to build the case,
Right.
to help their case. If they don't have any of that past and that one incident doesn't rise and that person's never had a report before, chances of them getting a restraining order are pretty slim to none.
Now, Victim's Voice helps bridge the gap with this because
Yes.
now we're building a case. How are we getting this out to as many potential people in need as possible? Because this app's incredible, honestly, and I'm so glad that our mutual friend Melissa Rattenberg brought us together. And I said, I don't know yet how we're going to make something incredible happen, but as time went on, it became more and more apparent. How do we get this into as many people's hands and heads as possible? Because this is so useful and so valuable. It really is.
So we are a for-profit social impact company, meaning that we don't fall under the nonprofit status. So we don't have to fundraise 24/7. We don't have any investors. We're bootstrapped. We also don't take government funding, which means we're not beholden to grant regulations, which means that we can do what we want to do. However, with that said, all of the regulations that we must follow for data privacy and protection and all that comes at a cost.
Right.
And so the only way we make money is through an annual license that the user pays. So the individual user can purchase a license on their own. It's $39.95 a year, which to most people doesn't sound like a lot. But with domestic violence, $40 a year may as well be $4 million a year because they're all victims of financial abuse and they just don't have it. So we created a partner program and we partner with victim serving agencies and entities that do distribute these app licenses at no charge. So they prepay the license and then they dole them out. So we make sure that for people who can't afford it, they can buy it. They don't have to interact with anyone else. However, there's an ulterior motive on our side to getting these licenses in the hands of the partners. We're a tool. We're not a resource. We don't have a call center. We don't have a hotline. We don't have a crisis shelter. We don't have victim advocates on staff. We're a tool. But through that partnership, we can encourage victims to become survivors by reaching out to those area local resources, getting the documentation tool that they need, and through that connection, finding out what resources are available to them in their community.
That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've partnered with district attorney's offices, family law attorneys, a lot of nonprofits, victim advocate groups, and through social media, and speaking engagements, just trying to educate people on the importance of having your evidence. Even if you decide never to come forward, who knows, maybe it'll be very therapeutic for you to write a book down the road. And when you have all the details all written out for you, it makes that process easier and a faster path to your own revenue.
Well played. Well played.
Including pictures,
Yeah. One thing I appreciate is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your tool allows people to, pay for the annual license, and if there's, say, a year they don't need it, they don't need to pay for that year or years. But then if they realize down the road, I need that information back, they pay for the annual license. That information is all stored, it's all there, and they have full access to it. And that's also just a wonderful aspect of this web-based app. Really well thought through. I am truly impressed. Really.
Thank you. We've also recently partnered with EVAWI, End Violence Against Women International, and we were the technical partner for them, and we built their sexual assault reporting tool, which allows someone who's been a victim of a sexual assault it's called Seek Then Speak, and it walks them through all kinds of in-depth information about what their options are, what pitfalls do they need to be careful about, like mandatory reporters, and what information do they not have to give if they're not ready, and what information are they going to be expected to give if they want to proceed with a criminal charges. And then if they decide that they want to go that next step, it has a preliminary investigative report that they can complete. It is not a reporting tool in that it doesn't send that report to anyone. Mm-hmm. It allows them to download that PDF and then decide what they want to do with that PDF. They can take it to a police department or a crisis shelter or whatever.
Right.
If the sexual assault is part of a larger scope of domestic violence, they can now also upload that report into VictimsVoice and store it as future testimony. So we now, as of this week, allow for PDFs and documents to be uploaded into the application as well.
All right.
So, yeah. So police reports, medical reports, all that kind of thing can now be uploaded into the app.
Beautiful. So we're running a little short on time. I want to ask about 2 or 3 more questions.
Sure.
First, I want to ask, what is usually the point when people begin to consider self-reporting? Is there a typical point, or is it variable across individuals? When do people start saying, okay, you know what, now I have to make a change. I need to start taking pictures. I need to start creating this dialogue. And when would you want people to start thinking about it?
So that's 2 different answers. When do I want people to start thinking about it is if you feel like you're walking on eggshells, or you're starting to question or starting to make excuses for behavior. Well, they've had a really hard time at work, or, well, they were drunk when they did it, or, those types of excuses. Mm-hmm. We have a saying, our tagline is legally admissible documentation really doesn't matter until it does. So the earlier you can start to document, it doesn't hurt to document. Right? It doesn't mean you ever have to take action on that documentation, but God forbid you need it and it's not there, then, all that history is lost. So I tell people, document, even if it's just a bad month, document. Doesn't hurt.
Right.
When do people usually start documenting? Mm-hmm. It's when the wheels start to click and they start to recognize what's happening to them is abuse. When they realize that they no longer have access to their money, they're starting to feel afraid for their safety, or their kids' safety, or their animals' safety. When things escalate to the point where they feel like I might need to get a protective order, that's usually when people start. But there's years before that. That the average is 10 acts of violence before they call the police. 10 acts of physical violence before they make the first phone call to the police. That's a lot of abuse that's happened.
Yeah. That's the average.
Yeah. And another staggering average, a very well-known average, but then the average is 7 times that the survivor will go back to the abuser. And if anyone's seen the series Made on Netflix, you know why. Financial abuse makes it impossible for people to
survive on their
strike
own.
out on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a big ladder to climb.
Yes. And COVID has only exacerbated an already exponential pandemic. And I'm not talking about the COVID pandemic. I'm talking about the abuse pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Again, Sheri, I truly appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. We're running out of time, but I do want you to let everyone know where they could find your fantastic app and any last thoughts that you have.
So they can find us on the web at victimsvoice.app, or all of our social media handles are Victims Voice app. So we're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, we're pretty much there. Don't laugh at my TikTok videos. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And I'm going to do what I can during our symposium week to make sure everyone that is in our chat rooms is aware of your app. And outside of that, I'm also going to make sure Community for a Cause does what we can to make sure those who are in a position to help other survivors be aware that this tool is available.
Yeah, we actually have a donor program. We have officially partnered with a victim advocate nonprofit called the DVA Center. That's dvacenter.org. And they, with them, they are our financial sponsor for our Halo app. And if someone donates $40 to the Halo app, $30 spins off to pay for a license, and $10 goes into a cash fund where we soon will be giving out up to $1,000 interest-free loans with up to 6 months to pay it back for any victim of domestic violence who just needs cash to get out and feel safe.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. That is so necessary. The relocation process is a scary process. As you're well aware, obviously a lot of survivors are socially isolated as well as financially isolated. So the question of, can I even leave my abuser? Because where am I going to go besides be homeless on the streets is a very, very stark reality. So that $1,000 will at least get them someplace to stay for the night and be able to regroup, especially if they have kids, pets, etc. So
yes, when I left, I left with a toddler on my hip, $150 in my pocket, and was homeless for 3 months. So I understand the reality. And I worked part-time at a record store making retail rates, So yeah, the struggle is real, and I get it. Yeah.
Wow. Well, again, Sheri, thank you very much for your time. We do have to run. We'll be in touch, obviously, and we'll be working together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Cheers. Have a good day. Enjoy the seminar. Enjoy the week to come.
All right. Take care. Bye.